Welcome. You're watching Perspective. I'm Bimanta Swastoya, your host. And today we have a sub-talk with Philip Kine from Human Rights Watch. You're Asia Director. Or
yes, I'm the New York-based Asia Deputy Director.
Philip here is in Jakarta for a few days, and including to unveil the Human Rights Watch World Report 2015, but yes. That'll be not today. But he's quite good on Indonesian human rights. Indonesia has been like in a new era from the 1998 from the fall of Suharto at the time. So far, do you see much changes in the human rights scene in Indonesia?
You know, Indonesia has come a long way since 1998. Right. I mean, if you look at Indonesia, it has this, extremely vibrant free media. We have this civil society, NGO sector, and we have a population that is willing and able to challenge the government on issues of human rights. So those are all pluses in terms of how Indonesia has changed for the good.
So there's a counterbalance in some sort for the government. You're speaking about civil society. I personally think they're not strong enough yet.
You know,
is it a shared?
You know, the fact is that, you know, in terms of the transition that Indonesia is going through since, you know, 98, it's not a lot of time. And, you know, this is essentially a society that's had to remake itself after this authoritarian, 3-decade authoritarian period. Could things be better? Sure. Could things be worse? Absolutely. Sure. So I think that we need to build on the strengths. But that doesn't mean that the government is off the hook. And in our world report that we're issuing, you know, we point out where the government of Indonesia has fallen short in terms of delivering on the human rights that are guaranteed both under international instruments and also under Indonesia's own constitution. So there is more work that needs to be done, and this is a perfect opportunity with the new government of President Joko Widodo.
Let us talk, for example, we were talking about a decade or 2 decades ago almost. What about the past 2 years, for example? Has there been any improvement, or is it going down the drain rather?
You know, the fact is, unfortunately, you know, the decade of the previous president, SBY, was a real disappointment in terms of human rights. And what President Widodo is facing is this real toxic legacy of rising religious sectarianism and violence and intimidation of religious minorities. We're having an erosion in women's rights, and we're also seeing, you know, an ongoing impunity of security forces, particularly in Papua, which has become this real festering wound that the government is absolutely been unable or unwilling to confront and deal with in a way that respects the rights of the people of Papua.
In what particular area in terms of human rights is Indonesia really lagging at the moment?
You know, I mean, I think that I'm going to go back to, I'm going to talk about Papua first. Sure. I mean, Papua is a place where, I just already said that Indonesia has this free media and this vibrant civil society. In Papua, journalists haven't been able to access Papua for more than 50 years. It's sealed off from foreign correspondents. It's sealed off from diplomats and international organizations. It's almost impossible to get government permission to go there. So what happens is this is this opaque area where essentially abuses can occur with impunity, and there is no redress, there's no coverage. And we've seen that recently, even with the recent shootings in December in Enoratali, where there was this real problem in trying to confirm what happened because journalists are unable to operate there freely. And then, of course, we saw this delay in terms of the government response in investigating. So that's a key issue. And, you know, another issue really is this rise in these militant sectarianism, these Islamist militants who victimize religious minorities, such as the Ahmadiyya, such as the Shia, such as Christian groups. Under the previous government, those groups were able to victimize religious minorities without any fear of being challenged by the police. And in many cases, we saw the police being actually actively or passively complicit. So this is a serious problem for a country like Indonesia, which styles itself as this moderate Islamic country in which all religious minorities are respected and protected.
Multifaceted, multi-ethnic.
Exactly.
Group.
Yeah, it's a challenge to that identity.
Right, right. But let's talk about President Jokowi, for example. He's been here for like, what, 100 days.
Sure.
Cannot judge him by what he's been doing, but in certain areas in human rights, you can actually talk about the death sentence, for example. He's put on his feet on in the case and says like no pardon for traffickers. What do you think about that? Was it? Did you think it would be the case? Because I know personally that was the case a while ago. His stand.
Sure, sure. You know, Bim, you put it perfectly when you said this is early days. It's 100 days.
Right.
So, you know, let me start by saying a couple of things that encouraged us about President Widodo even before he became president.
Right.
And the first thing he said that he was willing to investigate and was going to investigate certain specific disappearances from 1998.
Right.
That is progress if he actually follows through.
Right.
You know, the second thing is that when he visited Papua before he was elected, he said on the record that he felt that Papua should be open to journalists.
Right.
So these are two commitments that, if he follows through, would mean huge progress. But you mentioned this idea of the death penalty.
Right.
And this is a huge disappointment that, you know, that this has become, for President Widodo, this, you know, a war on drugs in which he wants to clean out death row on Indonesia by executing people who have been convicted of drug trafficking.
Right.
You know, this goes against a global trend against the death penalty. So it's actually embarrassing for a country like Indonesia, which styles itself as this regional power that is actually showing the way for how middle countries can develop. Yeah. And the other issue is the fact that there's no deterrent value. I mean, to execute people, basically you're taking away any potential redress for them. It's irreversible, and it goes against their essential right to life. Right. So this is hugely disappointing. And the other thing is that even the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, in 2010, they recommended that the death penalty should be removed for drug offenses, period. So this goes against international norms and international standards.
All right, okay. Whatever he thinks, or whatever his principle is, there's also an existing public pressure that actually mirror what his sentiment. What do you think about that? Because it's, in terms of damage done, it's really, we're seeing it.
Sure.
Basically on a day-to-day basis where people are getting really, done by drugs.
Sure, sure. You know, we recognize that there is a lot of popular support for the death penalty in Indonesia, particularly with regards to drug crimes. But the fact is, you know, the basic obligation of a government governing is to lead. And to lead means that you don't just respond to public opinion or public pressure. You do what's best for your people, for your country, based on a whole array of factors. And when you take a look at the death penalty and at the plus and minuses of executing people, you know, it's far heavier on the minus side. And I think that, and we hope that President Widodo realizes this and provides clemency for those people on death row and moves back toward abolition of the death penalty.
Okay, we have unfortunately to break for a while. Please stay with us, we'll be back.